The given passage deals with the transaction of money between countries on the international level. The paragraph begins with a pertinent question, which is what happens when a country defaults on its debt. That is, what happens if a country is not able to pay back the debt that it took from an international bank. So the answer to that question is that the answer is shrouded in mystery because formal defaults are usually avoided. Now, what is the general impression? According to the general impression, the country that is unable to pay back the debt will suffer irreparable damage, but in reality, many countries have failed to meet their obligations and ways have been found to accommodate them. Then the paragraph goes about giving examples when the debt was accommodated in case of certain countries, like African countries. In African countries, some debts have been forgiven entirely, and then there have been negotiations with instances of negotiations with other countries. And next paragraph discusses that the situation of lenders is much better than that of debtors, despite the fact that lenders have to suffer some amount of bad debt at times, and the situation of lenders in the international scenario is completely different from their situation in the domestic debt. In the case of domestic debt, in which advanced countries, in case of bankruptcy, tends to protect the debtors instead. So in comparison, the lenders are relatively immune in the international system. The paragraph then concludes on the note that issuing money is a national prerogative, and nations whose currency is readily accepted in the international financial transactions are much better situated than those that cannot readily borrow in their own currency. Right. Now the first question that follows says, according to the passage, what happens when a country defaults on its debt? That is, what happens when a country is unable to pay debt? It is mysterious and is not known because there are no precedents where the proceedings have been made public. It certainly is mysterious according to the first paragraph, but this portion of the information is incorrect, and therefore option A can be eliminated. B says the general impression that the general impression that the company suffers irreparable damage is correct. This is against the information given in the passage. The passage states in the very first paragraph that there are certain countries whose debt has been accommodated in case the countries are unable to pay them back. And option C says there are precedents which show that such instances are accommodated. This is true. Option D says, since the setting up of the Paris Club and the London Club, no such debt have been waived. Again, paragraph 1 gives examples of the times when the debt given to countries have been waived, like Africa, like many African countries. Now, the next question says, which of the following statements is true in the context of the concessions made to countries defaulting in their debt? Option A says they are allowed unilateral repudiation of obligation in special cases, especially where the Paris Club interferes. This portion of the answer is incorrect, of the option is incorrect. Let's move to the first paragraph which discusses it. Following the international debt crisis of 1982, the Paris Club was set up to deal with official debt and the London Club for commercial debt. In addition, Brady bonds were issued to reduce the principal amount of debt outstanding. In the case of African countries, some debts have been forgiven entirely to give the countries a new start. Concessions are made only in the context of negotiations. Unilateral repudiation of obligation will not be tolerated, and help from the international financial institutions is contingent on the orderly settlement of obligations. So clearly the passage states that unilateral repudiation of obligations will not be tolerated. So therefore the answer to this question is Unilateral repudiation of obligations is not tolerated. Concessions are made only when negotiations are done through the World Bank. Concessions are definitely done, but having made negotiations through World Bank, this is again not given in the passage. Help from financial institutions is contingent on obligatory settlement through the World Bank only. This is also incorrect. So the next question, the answer to this question is option C. Next question says, why do lenders tend to fare better than debtors in the international crisis? Reason being that they do not abandon the claims. The reason to this is given in this paragraph. It says, as a general rule, lenders tend to fare much better in the international debt crisis than debtors. They may have to roll over their loans, extend the dates of maturity, or even grant concessional rates, but they do not abandon their claims. They do not at all in any case abandon their claims, and that is the reason they are in a better stead. They fare better than debtors. Option A says they can extend the date of maturity, and this is enforced through international institutions. This does not give an extra advantage to the lenders, so clearly option A can be eliminated. C says debtors are forced to pay as part of the international code laid by the UN. Debtors are forced to pay, but according to international code laid by the UN, this is not given in the passage, so option C is also incorrect. The given paragraph here is a first person narrative by an arrogant, brash and reckless driver, a person who owns an SUV. He rudely asks the pedestrian to steer clear of his car, and that he should be careful when he is walking on road, because if in case they meet with an accident, nothing substantially is going to happen to him, but the and all the loss will be of Mr. Pedestrian. So by the end he says, and so long as I have the license to kill, that is drive, according to him killing is driving, the maximum punishment for negligent driving is 7 years in a cooler. But for you, Mr. Pedestrian, God forbid, in case of a head or spinal injury, it will possibly a case of lifelong imprisonment of the soul in a listless body. So clearly by the end the pedestrian is threatening the owner of the SUV is threatening the pedestrian, and is giving him warning him about the consequences of their encounter. So clearly the idea of threat is being carried forward in option C, which gives an advice. So because of what is possible, what is a possible outcome of our encounter, he says, so whatever you think of me and my mean machine, that is my car, you had better take extra care to get out of her way always. So this is also in line with the rude stance that he takes throughout the passage, throughout the paragraph. So option C is the correct answer. A says, I'm sure the very sight of my little angel tearing down the road makes you think of your maker. This is abrupt in comparison to the last, when it in connection with the last line of the paragraph, because in the end the author is talking in future tense about is threatening the pedestrian in future tense, while here he suddenly the tense is simple present, so it does not make sense. There's no connection with the last line. Option B says, and therefore my brother, I request you to not put your life and limb in peril. This option can also be eliminated because it is in a requesting tone, whereas the tone of the author of this particular paragraph is very rude, so it is not in line with his attitude. D says, though it is not my wont to advise careless people, you, Mr. Careless Pedestrian, and your ilk would do well to give some respect to all the 2, 3, 4 and multi-wheeled machines on the road. So where in the last line he is only talking about his machine, now he suddenly moved to discussing that the pedestrian should steer clear of all the wheels on the road. So this also does not follow, and also he is not given any advice to the pedestrian as such. So option D also can be eliminated. Hence the answer to this question is option C.